Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Courtside View basketball webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Wall-Jesper and Tribune basketball beat writer Steve Walentic. Steve, Missouri kind of continuing its trend of win at home, lose on the road for the last week. For the second straight game, they kind of have a road victory within their grasp, this time at Texas A&M. And Phil Pressey struggles down the stretch again for the second straight game. He kind of airmails a pass way out of bounds when they've got a 1-point lead and under a minute left, and then he attempts the winning shot and misses a three-pointer. Just your thoughts on
also a blown defensive assignment.
Yeah, and he lost the guy who made the winning three-pointer. Just your thoughts on what we're seeing out of him. It just seems from game to game wide differences in the amount of shots taken. Certainly has moments of brilliance, moments with kind of fantastic plays, and then also he's really struggled late in games, which is a little surprising for a guy that's kind of experienced and has been good. It was really good last year. Just what your thoughts on what's going on with him?
I think it really all comes back to the fact that he's got all these new teammates, and I think we're into February and he still doesn't have full confidence in the guys around him, and so because of that, he's not necessarily sure what his role is. Whether he's supposed to, be a counted-on scorer or just last year was really easy. They had guys who scored the ball at high rates, and he could score when necessary, but that was always a secondary part of his game. That hasn't been the case this year. There have been nights where they have needed him to score to win. You go back to the Bucknell game, the last non-conference game. They don't win that game without him scoring 26 points. So I think that there's a lot of confusion about that. I think the fact that he's a junior now and not the youngest guy on the team like he was last season means that he's feeling like he needs to do more. I think there were certainly a lot more expectations that met him at the start of the season as the preseason SEC Player of the Year, a guy who CBSSports.com had on their first-team All-America team. You won't get him to say this, but you wonder if in the back of his mind he's thinking about the possibility of turning pro at the end of this year. I think that seems like a much less likely scenario than it maybe did back in October. But if that was the case, does he feel like he needs to impress NBA scouts and show off his offensive arsenal? I think all of those things are factors, and then you add to it the fact that they don't have Mike Dixon on the roster right now. They don't have a real backup point guard, or at least they haven't. Keon Bell, I think, is starting to fill that role, but there hasn't been a guy for most of this season that Frank Haith felt comfortable going to when Phil sort of got off course.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is the way people defend Missouri, which makes all the sense in the world, is Missouri, most of their offenses, they're going to run pick and roll with him. And just logically, because he shoots in the 30% range, that they're going to go underneath the screens and just kind of sag back into the lane. And so they are daring him to shoot. I mean, that is what the defense is giving him. But I think you also have to think, if the defense is giving me this, there might be a reason the defense is giving me this. And so, yeah, you could shoot it, but I think he would probably be a little better off if he tried to run some offense, and that shot's always going to be there. They're always going to defend him that way. So if whatever you try to get going doesn't get going, there's 5 seconds left in the shot clock, fine. But I think he probably, a little too often early in the shot clock, is taking three-pointers or kind of forcing things. That's my perspective anyway, that if he can actually, work it and get a foot in the paint, that's when good things usually do happen for the Missouri offense.
Yeah, and that's a point that Frank Haith's been trying to get into his head all year. And, it's tough for Phil because I think he does work on his shot as much as anybody on the roster, really. And he wasn't a horrible three-point shooter last year. I think he was around 37% maybe, which, that's not going to win you any contests, but it's certainly respectable, and you had to respect him. I think the fact that he's been a pretty decent three-point shooter before and he's worked on it a lot means that he's confident in his shot, and even though it's not going in, he's stayed confident that it will eventually, and it just hasn't yet.
I will say this, too. Unlike earlier in the season, I think you're starting to see some other players from Missouri that are shooting the ball a little more consistently and don't have these wide gaps between home and road. Jabari Brown's a guy who shoots it fairly well. Keon Bell is coming on lately and given them some pretty good.
He's been their best player the last 2 weeks,
so I think
sure.
you have more reason to trust some of these guys than maybe he did earlier. And now that you got Bowers back, I mean, you've got some decent offensive weapons. I think you really do. I think Missouri's a better team if he takes less than 10 shots a game.
I think that's generally the case, and I mean, obviously he took 23 shots against Ole Miss, and they won, but they won as much because Keon Bell had 21 and Alex Oriaki really dominated inside.
Yeah,
and
that was the biggest factor.
I think he actually had a stretch late in the first half where he missed 7 shots in a row in that game, and they really struggled, and Ole Miss went on a little bit of a run to make it look like it could get to be a game again in the second half. It never really did, but I think he's still at his best as a playmaker first and foremost, and I think maybe he's starting to see that he does have guys that he can make plays for, and I don't think he was necessarily certain of that if you go back to December or even beginning of conference play.
Okay. Join in next time when we discuss Missouri's visit to Arkansas and whether the Razorbacks are a for real rival of Missouri.